you know, when you're every other part of writing is such a solitary thing that you don't experience that kind of wider arena that you're writing in. And even meeting up, or like, you know, chatting with you or meeting up with other authors, it's great. It just doesn't happen anywhere near as often enough as I would like it to.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Conversation with your host, Naveen Matheson. As always, I hope that you're well and I hope that you've had a good week. And if you're in England and Wales, I'm not sure about Scotland, but if you're in England and Wales, this week we are leading up to another bank holiday weekend and I can't wait. I really can't wait because I think I'm going to see Mission Impossible, the last film. And if you've listened to previous episodes of this podcast, you will know how much I love Mission Impossible. So I'm looking forward to that. And a thing I noticed when I was editing this week's conversation with Sunday Times bestselling author Heidi Perks, in which we'll talk about her new book, Somone Is Lying, I realised that there's been a bit of a common theme with my recent conversations, and that is that we've spoken a lot about persistence and the way in which authors have to find ways to take control when they're in a submission process or querying for agents, or they're just in the trenches of publishing. And also the many ways in which rejection can show up during our careers as writers. Rejection is not just something you just have to deal with when you're initially looking for agents. It can show up when you're out on submissions and publishers say no. It could show up when you've completed a book deal and publishers turn around and say, actually, we don't want any more books from you. Thank you. It's been emotional, but it's time to move on. Rejections there from readers, rejections there from festivals. You may be desperate to get on a panel, but they turn around and say no. And we as writers have to find so many different techniques and ways to deal with that rejection and all the constant burdens that this publishing journey can throw on us. That doesn't sound very joyful. I'm sorry. But it just occurred to me whilst I was editing that it had been a common theme recently. But also another common theme was the importance of having really good people around you. And that could be your friends and family, your writer friends, your tribe. You really need to find your tribe in this industry because their support is going to be so crucial to your survival. Literally, it will be crucial to your survival as a writer. Anyway, I'm going to get on with the show. As I said, this week I'm in conversation with Sunday Times bestselling author Heidi Perks. And in our conversation, we talk about asking yourself the question, am I good enough? The gamble of writing and writing for a new generation. Now, as always, sit back, we'll go for a walk and enjoy the conversation. Heidi Perks, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so my first question for you is, I know it always sounds very daunting, my first question, but it's a very nice one. So yeah. I was reading through your about, I think it was your about section on your website, and you was talking about how in 2012 you took redundancy, and then that led on to your writing career. And then I was thinking it's so funny because I was literally the year later, 2013, I took redundancy. And I felt that's when my writing career, it took off. So my question was, when looking back on it now, how crucial was that decision for you to take redundancy?
Oh, massively. I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't made that decision, because I had two small children as well at the time. So my daughter was 2 and I had a newborn baby. And so I think if I'd have carried on, I was only working part-time at that point, but I would no way have had the time or given myself that time to try and write. And really it was more of a decision of if I take redundancy, what can I do with my life? What do I want to do with my life? So it kind of gave me that window to look and say, this is what I want to do instead. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have done it if I hadn't have made that decision.
How long
Not at that point, anyway.
Yeah, I feel like until something like that happens, it may be something you've always thought about doing, whether it's being a writer or doing anything else. But it's kind of a mixture. Like you feel like you need to have the security and like this comfort, this buffer zone before you can make that next step. And then sometimes it takes that redundancy to force you into that position.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I have friends as well that you will do it alongside their, started off very much so alongside their job, and so many writers do that, don't they?
Mm.
And you have to find the time, whether you're commuting to work or whether you get yourself up at 5 o'clock in the morning, because it's too much of a gamble. I mean, I'm sure we, along with many other writers, know how much of a gamble it is to say you're going to write a book. You're going to, it took me years. It took me years to get to a point where I could say it was my full-time job, and that's just not something that you have the luxury of doing unless you make those kind of decisions, I don't think.
When did you get
Do
comfortable
you,
calling
like,
yourself a... Yeah, so go on.
oh, I guess not. And do you know what? It wasn't even when I was published. I think it was a while after I was published, because it's always one of those funny things, isn't it? You tell people you're a writer, or you tell
Mm.
people you're an author. It felt a bit cringy in a way. And and then you kind of wait for people's reactions as to, you get some really strange reactions along the way as well. Or, people thinking it's not a proper job for a while, or you're not published, or you're not doing it properly, or whatever. I'd say it was like 2 or 3 books in that I finally felt that kind of confidence to say that's what I was doing, because I was by then on a year a book contract. And not a full-time job, is it? But it was my job. That was what I
Mm.
did by that point. But yeah, it did take a couple of years and a few books for sure.
Yeah, you're not the first person like on this podcast to say that. It kind of feels like it's indulgent to call yourself a writer. And it's
Yeah,
anything but that. It's just who you are and what you choose, what you've chosen to do. But when you tell people, "Oh, I'm a writer,"
yeah,
it's like it feels a bit like, "Well, who are you to call yourself a writer?"
yeah, absolutely. I imagine it's like anything in the arts, in that kind of arena, isn't it? If you're an
Mm.
artist, or um, even, if you're an actor, like not someone who's on TV or whatever. But it's a very difficult thing, because I guess there's an expectation around it as well. As if you say I'm an author or I'm a writer, then everybody wants to know, well, what have you written? Well,
Yeah.
those are the questions you hear, aren't they? Well, have I heard of you? That's what I get. Have I heard of you? Well, you tell me. Clearly not.
I
Clearly not, if you're asking. Um, but or will I have read something of yours? It's like, it's the daftest of things, and you then feel like you're having to justify yourself. And still now, I justify what I've written, and it probably wouldn't be, maybe you haven't heard of me, maybe you haven't read me. It's a really, really funny thing.
it's it's such a ridiculous question. Because I said I've lost count of the amount of time someone goes, "Oh, so what have I read anything?" I'm like, "Well, how am I supposed to know? You tell me what you've read." Like, I don't know what's on your bookshelves. I say it much nicer than that.
Exactly
But
that.
basically, it's a silly
Yeah.
question. And it's like, okay, now I need to entertain you and justify why I'm doing what I do. It's so silly.
Yeah. And then I think you also, I still get this kind of feeling of, well, if you haven't heard of me and you haven't read any of my books, then I'm not enough.
Yeah.
You still have this, like you say, you have to justify it. Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? I guess I don't know, you don't get that in other jobs.
No, oh God, I've
If
never.
you're in a
Well, no, as a lawyer, if I've ever said to anyone, "Yeah, I'm a solicitor," no one's ever said, "Oh, have I ever heard of any cases that you've been on?" Like
Yeah.
you just wouldn't ask. They'd be like,
And
"Oh, I'll normally get the question, oh, how can you defend a guilty person?" But that's it.
yeah. Yeah. And it's that level of interest. But I think with writing, you kind of feel, and whether it's self-imposed or not, you feel this need to prove yourself,
Mm.
constantly prove what you're doing, and that you're good enough to be doing it, I guess. And I think I think probably that is an element of you prove it, need to prove it to yourself as well,
Yeah.
maybe.
So when you decided, so when you took redundancy, because I said it sounds like I've just been stalking you, but it's not. It's all available online. But when you did the Curtis Brown novel writing
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
What was your first day like? Because I remember mine on when I did my course. Can you remember how you felt?
Oh, well, I mine was online, so it
Oh,
was
was it?
probably very different to yours. Yeah, so we were the inaugural online course in 2013. And did you do Curtis Brown as well then?
No, I did City Uni creative writing MA.
Okay. So the reason I wanted to do online is because I'm based in Bournemouth and most of the courses are all in London.
Mm.
And obviously, as we've said, I've had two young children. So at that point, and so yeah, for me, I had to find an online course, and so it was very different. But I remember looking at everybody's photos as I started, and you feel this kind of sense of I don't know whether I should be here. I think all these people are have earned their place, and I don't feel like I'm quite up to everybody else's standard. And there were 15 of us on the course, and I really do remember thinking that. And also I'm not, when I say I'm not well read, I'm very well read in my genre. I read
Yeah.
loads and loads of books in the genre that I read, but I'm not very well read with literary books or the classics. That isn't my thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're with people who are, and you feel like, you just feel a bit, oh gosh, is this really the right place for me to be in? And then the other thing I found was a bit daunting was that you had to give people feedback. I don't know whether you had to do that on your course as well.
Hmm.
Give each other feedback on their writing.
Yeah.
And I thought I was rubbish at it. I really didn't know what to say to people, and that I found was a very difficult thing. And I loved getting feedback from other people, but when it came to me having to do it for them, it was quite a daunting experience. I kind of feel like I was completely thrown in, like I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for
Yeah.
at all. But go on.
No, I'm saying so. It is a weird thing that first day, or even those first couple of weeks, because you know you're there on your writing, and someone has read the sample of your writing and decided, yeah, you're good enough. You should
Yeah,
be on your course. So you know you've gotten over that step. But then whether you're doing it online, I did mine. Mine was in person. But it's that feeling of, I think, acknowledging for the first time that you're now exposed. You are exposed. You're writing exposed.
mm,
You as a person, as a writer, are now exposed, and then you have to, I said again, doing that feedback on others as well. That is daunting. It's like, oh my god, what am I supposed to say? Because I'm looking at this, how I feel. I'm looking at your work. I'm thinking, oh my god, you're so good, and I'm looking at my work, thinking, I am not that good.
yeah,
Like, what what can I possibly
yeah.
tell you?
I think it's amazing how, as writers, you kind of like beat yourself up so much, don't you? I mean,
Mm,
that's kind of what we've been saying so far. Is that like you're constantly? It's almost like you're constantly finding a reason to say that I'm not good enough to do this, and that's a shame, isn't it? That we
yeah.
feel like that we put that pressure on ourselves. But yeah, definitely in those early days, that is totally. I did feel like a bit of a fish out of water. Um, but I think, being online was probably a lot easier. Being able to hide behind a screen was a lot easier than being in the same space as other people like you were.
Mm, you can.
Now I would love it. I would love to go back to school and do courses and do all of those kind of things. I think now I'm like I really miss being with other people. I think writing is a very lonely thing to do. And, the majority of our time, we're just sat here on our own in our own headspace. And actually, I really miss that office environment. And I miss, like, the thought of going and doing a course or even one day a week or whatever. I'd love to. Do you feel the same? Do you
I
miss that other people?
I do. No, it's really strange because I do, and because I was going to ask you, because at the time, when you are at work and you're surrounded by people, and I was constantly surrounded by people, whether it's in the office or I'm going to court. It's my job. It's people based, and I used to think, God, I can't just wait to just work for myself and be away from everyone. And then when the moment comes and you have
Right.
the
Yeah.
opportunity, and you are working for yourself, and I'm like, I need people. I just miss those moments of, do you want to go to
Yeah.
lunch? Let's go for lunch. And you just go for lunch. Or
Yeah.
I'm just popping out to the shop. Do you want anything? Or you're just having a chat about
Yeah.
anything. It's just having those moments. Because when you're writing and you choose to take a break, there's no one to go to the shop with. You just walk into the shop on your own.
Yeah.
There's no one to say, let's go and have a quick lunch.
Yeah. No, it's exactly that. And it's not social interaction in terms of like meeting a friend for coffee either.
Mm,
It's that business, it's the social interactions that you get from a business environment that I miss.
yeah.
Um and whenever I have, and I don't do it often enough, but whenever I take a day to go and see the publishers or my agent in London, I absolutely love it because I suddenly feel like I'm part of something bigger. And maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is that it's that, when you're every other part of writing is such a solitary thing that you don't experience that kind of wider arena that you're writing in. And even meeting up or like, chatting with you or meeting up with other authors, it's great. It just doesn't happen anywhere near as often enough as I would like it to.
Did that surprise you that you'd have these feelings about, I say, about solitude and being a writer and wanting to have that connection? Because you say when you make that
I
decision to
don't think I
take
ever,
redundancy, sorry, because you
yeah.
know that you're
No,
cutting off.
I don't think I ever really made. I don't think I ever really gave it that kind of level of thought. I think
Mm,
when I took redundancy, and I remember sitting there thinking, right, I'm going to take this next year and write a book. That was my decision.
mm,
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna see if I can write that book that I've always wanted to write. So that was it. Like I said, I had two small, very young children. I mean, really young. My son was a few months old by this point when I started. Um, and so I kind of wasn't thinking long term. I just wanted to see whether or not I could write a book. And then when I did, and I started sending that out and I started submitting and I started the whole long process of getting lots and lots of rejections, at that point, that was when I thought, right, okay, what am I going to do with my life? It wasn't until like a couple of years further down the line that I actually took a step back and thought, is this what I want to be doing? Am I going to dedicate my time now to continue trying to write? Am I going to go back and do what I did before, which was marketing? Or am I going to do something completely different? And I remember thinking, I love writing so much. I can't imagine now doing anything else.
mm,
And it was a very conscious thought that I had at that point, where I was very wrapped up in what is the next step. The next step is I want to find an agent, then I want to be published, then I want to see my book on the shelf. I was so driving towards this dream I had of writing a book and getting it published that you don't kind of like take into account anything else around it. And there's
yeah.
still, my kids were not at school by this point. So yeah, I don't, you never ever look at how it's going to be in 5-10 years time. I think you're just so caught up in, am I going to be able to do this at that point? Is it actually going to get me anywhere?
How did you manage the rejection? Because that's nothing can really prepare you for that either when you're going through the submission process.
No, it was really hard. It was really hard, I won't lie, because a lot of the time you don't even get an email confirmation that you've been rejected. Sometimes you can be sat there and waiting, and weeks go past. And,
Mm,
particularly when you've submitted your work to agents, a lot of the time you don't even hear back from them. And that was very difficult because you then have to kind of make the assumption, okay, well, they're not interested. And just sometimes to get a letter to say thank you, but this isn't for me, was better than nothing. And you kind of pick yourself up and you go, okay, that's fine. We'll keep going. And actually, kind of when you're looking for an agent, that was okay. The hardest bit was when I had an agent and my very first book was submitted out to publishers, and it went to like a dozen publishers in the UK and another dozen in the US. And I was really excited about it at this point because I thought, okay, I've jumped the first hurdle. Um, Everybody was very positive that the book was going to get picked up, and then it didn't. And 25 publishers later, and quite a few months later until I got the final rejection, it was that point of thinking, God, I've now gone so far. I've written a whole book. I've been taken on by an agent, and then I've kind of reached another dead end. And I said to my agent, what do I do now? And she said, well, you're just going to have to write another book. And that was the point where I thought, oh my God, this is this has taken me so long. We're talking over a year. And I kind of got really impatient about it as well. And I remember thinking, I can't spend another year on a book for this same thing to happen again. And so I then rushed out a book really, really quickly in a matter of about 4 months. And clearly that wasn't a very good one. And she said to me, we don't even want to send this one out. It's not as good as your last one. And and it was a really hard time because I think I was battling with this. I was in my early 40s by this point, and I was battling with this. If I don't do it soon, I'm going to have to give up and do something else, financially and whatever else reason. Also, am I good enough then? Clearly I'm not going anywhere. So what's the point of carrying on? So it was a really hard time. But I do remember, like I said, before, with the whole, what do I want to do? There's nothing else I want to do. And I just thought, there is nothing else I want to do. I just need to carry on. I need to write another book. And that's what I did. And then eventually that was the book that would come to be Now You See Her, which was the first book that I was traditionally published and that did really well. But it was like 5 years from starting to write.
It's so not unusual, and I still don't think anything can prepare you, because I said all the build up is for getting an agent, and you do everything to get an agent. Yeah. You write the book, you do, you read all the, I don't know, how to get an agent guide. You do everything to get to that point, and then when you get an agent and you sign, I don't think it's unreasonable for anyone to think, oh my God, I've done it now. I've made it. Like the next bit is going to be easy. But then there's nothing that's going to prepare you for the fact that right now you go out on submission, and it's either going to be someone wants you straight away, you go into an auction, or it's going to be more rejection, and your agent says to you, okay, not this book, let's try the next book. Or it could be the third book. So the fact that it was even it's your first book that's published isn't even your first book. It's your third one.
It was my fourth, actually, because I'd written another one. I'd written another one that I'd sent out on submission to agents that never got picked up. And then I started writing my second one when I went onto the Curtis Brown course. That was the one that got me an agent, but then that didn't get me anywhere. And then, I wrote a third one that didn't get me anywhere. So, it was my fourth one. But then I'd started writing my fourth one and my agent dropped me. So
no,
I then really had to take a step back. Yeah. So not only
oh my God, I feel like it just happened.
Rejections. I can remember it so clearly, and it was quite amusing in hindsight because I'd jumped on a call and I'd sent like early chapters of Now You See Her, and I was really excited about this one. I thought, right, this has got something. I really think
You
this
knew
one's
it.
got something more than the
Mm.
other ones had. And I jumped on this call and I was really expecting some positive feedback.
Oh my God.
And instead, what I was told was, I don't think there's anything, like literally word for word, there's nothing more we can do with you. We're going to have to let you go. Um, and so, yeah, and so I then lost my agent, and I was like, I came off the call and I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally back at square one. You know, it's like all these years have passed, and I'm now, I've written 3 books and I don't have an agent. What am I going to do? So it was actually the best thing that could happen, because I worked on the book and I submitted it to different agents, and I managed to secure the agent that I'm with now, who's absolutely amazing. Um, so, you know, it all worked out for the best in the end. But at that point, it was definitely oh my goodness, a real
I
setback. Because, like you
and
say, you're so driven to get an agent, aren't you? That is
yeah,
like a major step. Oh,
but how do you but how do
nearly
you get
lost you.
through that? Like, because then all the
Um,
build up is to get an agent, and you get an agent, and then they say it's not. Oh, it's like you're being dumped. You're so being dumped. Sorry.
I was dumped. I
But
was properly
how do you get
dumped.
through it? But it's just something I'm asking is like,
Oh,
you make all these decisions and they're life changing decisions. I'm gonna take redundancy. I'm gonna change my life to do the thing I really want to do. You do everything you're supposed to do. You know, it doesn't work with the first book, so you do another one and you do another one and you get your
no,
agent, and then they dump you. It's like how do you
redundant.
keep going? Yeah. Sorry, that sounds so harsh.
I was,
I don't
yeah.
know where I can put it.
No, but do you know what? And but it happens, and it's true.
Yeah, it does.
And the funny, like, I remember my daughter being about, she must have been about 6 at the time, and she'd come into my room and she'd said, "Are you okay?" And I thought, right, this is gonna be a lesson in, like, you know, being strong and turning things around. And I was like, you know, it's okay. My agent has said that she doesn't want to work with me anymore, but it's okay because I'm going to do this. And I remember looking up and she'd walked out the room. I thought,
Oh my
oh God,
God. Even your
no one
child has
wants to
said
listen.
no.
Even my child has dumped me and rejected me. But
Oh.
what I did then eventually go on to do was I self-published my book that had been rejected by publishers. So I thought, no, I'm going to take it into my own hands and, like, take back a bit of control. And I decided to self-publish that
Mm.
one whilst still looking for another agent for what was going to be Now You See Her. So I think that actually was probably what helped me, because it gave me that bit of control back. And I think that that's what you lack when you're in everybody else's hands. Is, you know, you can write a great book, but it might not be what anybody's looking for at that
Mm.
time. Or, you know, you're so out of control. Everybody else has, you know, that control of your destiny and your future, really. And that's still pretty much the same now, isn't it, with writing?
I said a couple of weeks ago in my WhatsApp group with my writer friends, and I said it's the only job. If you saw it advertised, I'll say because I'm old. If I saw it advertised in the newspaper, I wouldn't apply for it, because the job description would basically say, you know, you can work remotely, you can work on any project you want to, so you have complete autonomy, but there's no guarantee that you'll get paid at the end, and there's no guarantee that there'll be a further project taken on after this. You just wouldn't apply for it because you're like, well, what's the point? Like, you do all this work and there
That
are no
is,
guarantees attached to it.
yeah,
You would never apply for that job. But, you know,
no,
every day someone will sit down and make that decision to, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to
yeah,
write that book. It's something else that pushes you through
yeah,
it.
no, that is so true. What is it? What is that thing? I don't know.
Delusion?
What
I
is
don't
that
know.
thing that pushes you through? I think Delusion is a good word for it, maybe. I think you hope, don't you? Because actually, it doesn't even finish there. It doesn't finish when you get published. I mean, I had very much the experience that my first book did by far the best of all my books, and I'm on
Mm,
book seven's about to be published now, and so you know, there's no kind of like flow of like you build yourself up, you get published, and every book progresses from there on in. You know, my book went in there, and then literally it's like being this little kind of roller coaster
yeah.
hanging beneath it ever since. And yeah, it's you have to. It kind of like is a massive learning curve that 6 books, 7 books down the line, you're still coming to terms with.
It it is crazy. It is crazy because if you sat down and if I looked at it like pros and cons, just like a sheet in front of me, I would just say like, no, move on. I'm going to apply for something
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
What would your advice be if you were talking
I
to
did.
someone now, like a brand new, an aspiring writer? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah. I mean, oh God, it sounds like we should be saying don't do it, doesn't it? But no,
It
I
does.
think I think the joy you can get out of it as well. And and I do believe, and it's what I say to my kids, you have to follow your dream. If there's something that you
Mm,
want to do, I would much rather look back and regret, well, you wouldn't regret and say, oh well, I tried it and it didn't work. I would much rather do that than get to the end and say, I wish I had tried doing that.
yeah.
Because you just don't know what great things are going to come out of it. Um, and you know, yeah, I would say go. I would say go for it. I totally would, because I think it is really important that if you've got that passion in you, you try and do it. You try and do whatever it is that you need to do. Definitely.
Listeners, it's time for a very short break. If you're enjoying this conversation with Nadine Matheson and want to help keep the podcast going, why not buy me a cup of coffee? Your support goes such a long way in keeping these conversations flowing. Just check out the link in the show notes. What has your journey so far? So your writing journey, because I always say your writing journey and your publishing journey are two different things, but looking at them, taking them
Right.
as a collective, what has this journey taught you about yourself?
I think it's taught me that I'm very resilient.
Mm,
And that, and also that I think I have a self-belief. I know that we've kind of discussed that you go into certain situations and you think I shouldn't be here or whatever, but I think I had that belief that I could do it. And it wasn't just a want to. It was I thought, no, there's no reason why I can't do this. I just have to keep pushing. So it's taught me that really more than anything. Um, I guess it's taught me other things along the way. It's taught me, like I've said to you, that I miss being with other people. That's a big part of what I do. And also that I still like learning.
mm,
You know, I love. I'd hate to get to a point where I'm very static in what I'm doing. I think with every book that I write, I'm learning something new, and not just. I don't just mean in terms of what I'm researching, but I mean even recently I had a conversation with my publisher about the commercial side of it, and I thought, that was something I didn't know, and I love all of that. I love still learning. I couldn't not do anything at all. And I kind of look to the future and think, oh, wonder how many more years I've got in me before I have to give this up. And that's quite a daunting thought as well, isn't it? You think, in 10 years' time, I mean, oh God, I don't even want to think what age and where I'll be in 10 years' time, but will I still be writing? Because you have to adapt, don't you, depending on your age.
You do.
It becomes harder almost.
It becomes harder. And I'm always thinking, like, I'll finish the book. And, you have that relief of like, I've finished the book, I've sent off to my editor, now you're going through the process. You know what comes next. But then when you have to sit down and, okay, let me think about what am I going to write next? And I'm always thinking, do I have any new ideas? Like, will I get a new idea?
Oh,
That's always, I don't know if that's just part of the process, like forcing you to get into that thinking habit. But that's always the number one thing that pops into my head. Like, well, what am I going to do now? Do I have anything fresh?
yeah. Especially like 10 more new ideas if you're talking about writing for another 10 years. I mean, this last one, book 9, I'm contracted to do book 9 and book 10 still. I'm on a two book contract every time. Oh, it was by far the hardest process of coming up with a new idea that I've ever had. And everything, I think, I kind of thought, oh well, I've kind of done that in some way or not. And I've only written, well, this is book 9. You think of like very prolific writers like Lisa Joel or
Yeah.
others like that who've written 18, 19, 20 books. And I think, oh, how do you keep coming up with a new idea?
It's crazy. I think
Hard.
Dorothy Coombson's on, I think she's on 21, 22. I think Adele Parks is on
Wow.
25. And
Is she
I'm only
really?
on, I've just book 4's with my editor. So I'll be
Right.
writing my 5th book. And I've got ideas. I know what book 5 and well, in my series is going to be about. And I got another idea for Stan. So maybe, okay, I've got 3 book ideas in the bank. But after that, I'm like,
That's pretty good going.
it's pretty good go. Yeah,
That
I'll
is
accept
pretty
that.
good
It's
going.
pretty good going. But after that, I'm like, oh, what the hell
You
am I going
have
to
to
write about?
accept that.
Yeah, I can accept that.
I mean,
But I'm still thinking, oh,
no.
what will I do next? Because I think for me, writing police procedurals, I'm always very much aware of the fact that you're always going to be. There's always going to be certain beats that will always be in a police procedural. So I said there will always be a chase scene.
Yeah.
There will always
Yeah.
be an interview scene. It's just they will always have to be there, and it's just can you create a strong enough story with the characters and the investigation around that so no one gets bored. So yeah, there's so many different challenges that I don't think anyone else is aware of.
No, and that's interesting that you say that about like writing a series and writing a police procedural series, and is I guess that's very different to what I do, which is a standalone book every time, and
Mm,
thinking up new characters, and both of them will bring their own challenges, won't they?
yeah,
Like you say, you've got to think of different like relationships and different storylines for similar characters, and yeah, for me, it's a completely new plot and a completely new relationship and a completely new story. And I don't know which is easier.
I don't think
Maybe
anyone's
yours is
easier.
if you've got 3 ideas in the pipeline.
Well, it's
I
not. It's
don't
nice
know.
knowing I have them. It's nice knowing I got those 3 ideas. But I don't think one route
Oh,
is easier than the other. But then I think people will understand why writers aren't particularly fond of the "so where do you get your ideas?" question. You're like, mate, I don't know.
oh,
I really
no,
don't know.
no. And sometimes they just come to you and they're like almost
Yeah.
fully formed. And I had that with book 8, and it was an absolute blessing. And it turned out to be a wonderful book to write, and I really, really enjoyed it, and all went brilliantly. But yeah, this next one has like been an absolute struggle. It definitely doesn't get any easier, does it? I don't
No.
think. But
Do
what
you?
I'm also finding is that like
Mm,
with age, you have to kind of adapt what age group I'm finding like with my books, I have to kind of adapt what age group what my the age of my characters are, because I don't want to read about people that are in their, I mean, it's difficult to say, but I guess I'm writing younger. My
mm.
characters, I'm having to write younger and younger, and I think that's what worries me is like, what if I suddenly become out of touch? with
Well, that's
what
something.
30 and 40-year-olds are doing.
No, but I think that's perfectly valid because, you know, the way we viewed life when I was good, when I was in my 30s or early 40s. And so we're talking we're talking what, like
I
mid
lost you then.
2000s to now. Oh no, I was just saying that I think it's perfectly valid because the way that I would have viewed life 15 years ago is when I was in my
Yeah,
what, early 30s, and that whole time period was different. So we're talking like mid
yeah,
2000s. You know, the things that were available to us, how we communicated with people, all of that was different.
yeah,
And so a 30-year-old's experience back in 2000 and what year would it have been for me? 2007 is going to be completely different to a 30-year-old's experience now in 2025. So I think it's perfectly valid to have all of those concerns about being out
yeah,
of touch. Because no one would
yeah,
even
very much, I
online
think.
date
And
in the early
no,
2000s.
no, no, it's really true, actually. I think you do have a tendency to look back at your own time of life then and to try and replicate that, don't you?
Yeah.
When you're writing about someone of that age. Yeah, it's a really good point. So yes, in when I'm in my 60s and I'm still trying to knock out a book, which many people do brilliantly, and but goodness knows what I'll be coming up with by then.
I think you'll be fine.
Hopefully it'll
I,
be right. Yeah,
I think you'll be fine.
yeah,
As
who
long as the
knows?
story, yeah, as long as the story is good. I think that's what people want. As long as the story is good. But I think it is,
So yeah,
but it is, yeah, not hard, but it is a concern when you have to think about also having in the back of your mind how quickly the world is moving. Because you remember, even like with COVID, if you read
yeah.
books 5 years ago, it's like, I don't want to write a book about COVID. And then fast forward to now, it's
Mm.
even hard to think that there was a time when we couldn't do anything. And even now, that seems kind of dated if you were going to write about having that COVID experience, that
I
pandemic.
agree. I think
Mm.
yeah, I totally agree, actually. If I ever read it in a book, I think, well, firstly, I don't particularly want to read it in a book, or not that it's done in that much detail, but you're right, it's aged so quickly
Yeah,
because it was such a part of our lives. And then suddenly, like 5 years on, it feels like a really distant memory, doesn't it? So yeah, it is. You have to take all of those things into account, don't you? And the speed of technology and technological changes and AI and what the police can do now, and and I don't have any of that knowledge that you obviously have with police procedure and detective, and that's not first-hand knowledge to me. So that
yeah.
is another factor that I really have to make sure that I'm on top of as much as possible, because it's yeah it's that's one of the other things that I find quite difficult to make sure I get right, but really important.
Do you feel, I don't know if it's pressure is the right word, but do you feel that pressure to make sure that it's right when it comes to certain aspects of the book?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely the detective, definitely the police procedural side of it. Yes,
Mm.
I do. I just don't want it to, even what people call each other, even ranks, and what how they might speak to each other. It's something that I, as a writer, will only really get from TV. And
Yeah,
so, you kind of like make your own, form your own judgment of what people might say. But actually, for the first time ever, what I've done with this last book is give it to. So I have a policeman friend who's just been absolutely amazing throughout, from the beginning, in terms of going through everything with me. But I've given it to him and he's just read it. And I've just said, I want you to just read it and say, at this stage, is it realistic? Would this happen? Would you actually, so I'm waiting. I'm actually going to have a conversation with him this afternoon. So that'll be an interesting one. But I think for me, yeah, that is really important because you're kind of right. It's a big part of the book,
Mm,
getting that bit right. And that's why, on the whole, I don't really focus on the police procedural side of it. I'm more about the relationships between normal everyday people, and I try to keep that at a bit of a distance so that I don't get too bogged down in all of that.
yeah.
But yeah, it is important to me. I think making sure it's right.
Yeah, just before we started recording, so I do the same thing, like the legal consultation. So I was having a chat with someone about they just had legal questions about their book and court procedure and things. But I'm always constantly, I will say, yeah, I will give you the law and how things work in practice. But I'm also always like at pains to say you can take creative license because you kind of have to, because I've done it myself
Yeah,
when writing. I said, you don't want to get it wrong. And I don't want anyone emailing me saying, well, Nadine, you didn't do that. And like, you should know better. So I so want to get it right.
yeah,
But I say, sometimes you can write yourself into corners because the law and the story
yeah,
doesn't fit together. And you have to be confident enough to feel like I can take creative license with it. Not crazy, massive ones, but
yeah,
small ones that it makes it all seem plausible.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and that is actually my Chris, my friend. He's very good at saying, he says, I'll watch dramas on TV, and they're completely unrealistic. But you kind
Oh
of go with it because it's a drama at the end of the day, and it's fiction. And I think then you just have to ignore the people who are quick to point out that. I mean, I've had some crazy things pointed out to me as well that I've got wrong, like this show wasn't actually running in the West End in that year. I'm like,
yeah.
okay, okay, it was every other year. And it's like it's funny what people want to put. I mean, people are funny, aren't they? People, but I guess if you're reading a book and you notice something's wrong, it kind of does jar a little bit, and you go, okay, well, it doesn't to me actually. I'll just skip over it. But I'd never go out of my way to tell someone that they got it wrong.
No, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't because I think because obviously I'm in the business now. Like I was reading a book and it was a finished copy of a book. It wasn't a proof copy. So the proof copies, you're expecting to see the missing words because it's uncorrected. But there was a
Yeah,
mistake in the final copy, and I was just like, oh well, it just got missed because it happens. It's happened with my
yeah.
books. Like 7 pairs of eyes have been on the manuscript and it's got to
Oh, a
print
hundred
and then no
percent.
one literally, it happened to me like no one's seen it until I can't remember if
No.
I think I was doing a reading. Yeah, I was doing an event and they asked me to read, well, totally unplanned for, but they asked me to read a passage and I picked up a random chapter and I was like,
Oh,
oh my God, this has been there for years.
oh my God.
But lucky
You
no
saw
one
a
said anything.
spelling mistake.
Yeah. And to me, I'm like, how could I miss it? How could 7 pairs of eyes miss it?
Yeah,
But no one's come to me and
it's
said,
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. Right. So I'm going to ask you
I've
about,
had spelling mistakes.
sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say I've definitely had spelling mistakes pointed out to me on email before from readers. But you're like, well, okay, there's nothing much I can do about it. But
I,
thanks.
I try not, I literally, when I've had them and I just pull a face and I'm like, well, what, I want to reply. There is absolutely nothing I can do about it right now. And do you feel better? But then I
Yeah,
just choose to just
just
delete.
you just have to ignore it. You
You
have to
do.
ignore it.
Right. I'm going to ask you about, because we need to talk about your book. So
Yeah,
I've got the proof copy. I haven't got the final copy. Someone is lying, right? And Heidi,
yeah,
I was saying to you this before, and I don't think it's a spoiler because it's so early doors in the book, like explaining why Jess's husband, like, is not with her. And this was my response. I think it's always like the best response you want from someone. So when he says he's leaving and you found out why, my response was, I'm just going to swear. I was like, who the fuck is Rita? was like, what are you going on with Rita? And I said it out loud. And then I said to myself, that is the best
Oh,
response, because I think that's what you want from a reader when they're going through your book. You want them to be, it's either like a massive verbal outburst that makes them put the book down and, shout expletives, or just like, oh my God. So well done. I wasn't impressed with
thank you.
Rita.
I love that. I think that I definitely want everybody to be saying that. And I think that just kind of shows that I think that you're in the head of the character when you feel like that,
Yeah,
doesn't it? That you
it
can,
does.
you kind of like have that empathy. So that's good. I'll take that.
You can put it on tell them to put it on the quote, on the blurb. Who the
Yeah.
F is
You
Rita?
could quote you could quote it for the cover. Maybe that should be the title.
Yeah. Sorry. I just had to share it because I thought I think I love those moments. And if a book doesn't make you get that emotional, then I don't feel like, you've done such a good job.
Thank you.
So would you like to tell the readers about Someone Is Lying?
About Someone Is Lying. Well,
Yeah.
so Someone Is Lying is the story of Jess, who is the mother of Izzy, and her daughter have a very close bond. She's a single mother with an only child, and they have a very close bond until Izzy gets to the age of about 16, where she meets Dylan, her boyfriend, and Jess is very, very unsure about Dylan. She doesn't trust him, but she does decide that she has no choice but to let Dylan and Izzy go traveling together. And they do. And then within a week or 2 weeks, over the period where Izzy's turning 18, she suddenly stops hearing from her. And she knows that something's very wrong and she can't get hold of her daughter. And it's the story then of what happens thereafter, how it's very difficult to get anybody to believe her that her daughter is in danger and her daughter's missing, because Izzy's now turned 18, and it's kind of like taking a child going missing story and turning it on its head a bit, in that your daughter's now 18 and she's just turned to be an adult, and really it's a very different time of life when you've got teenage daughters who can pretty much do what they want to do, and letting them have that freedom, but still having that, responsibility for them and horrendous knowledge that something's not right and you can't get anyone to believe you. So that's kind of like the crux of the story. And it's written by Jess. It's also written by Dylan's mother. So it's written by the two mums rather than the kids themselves. Yeah, that's kind of like the premise of it.
Can you think of any, or were there any the major challenge that you had? It could be like a big or small one of writing this book. I think there's always something that it doesn't have you crying in a corner. What makes you regret your life choices?
Do you mean when I was do you mean about writing, like a challenge with writing the actual book, or with
this
something
book,
else?
with writing this book, yeah.
I had a major challenge with this book. The biggest challenge that I've had with any of my books.
Really?
In that, I sent it off to my agent and editor, the first draft, and I was so excited about this one. And I always, Nell, my lovely agent, always emails me straight back after she's read it in about 48 hours and goes, "Oh my God, I love it." And I didn't hear from her. And I thought, oh, okay, this doesn't bode well. And we got on a call last summer. Was it last summer or the summer before? No, it must have been the summer before. And they both said, it's not working. We like it. We love the story. We love the premise of it, but the book's not working from like 40% of the way through. They didn't like what had happened, what was the outcome, what had happened to Izzy and Dylan, the way that I'd written it. And so I had this chat with them and I took on board their feedback, and basically my decision was I either scrap the book and write a different one, or I have to write 60% of the book again. And it was exactly 60%. And I made the decision that I didn't want to forget the story because I loved the story and, I really thought it had something, but I had to completely change 60% of the book and
Wow.
rewrite it. So
I
yeah,
wasn't
my
expect.
biggest
I wasn't.
challenge.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know. I thought maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know what I was expecting. It wasn't that.
yeah.
That's a
No, and by
lot.
far that's like it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, and it was also you're kind of like having to write within the confines of something that you've already got. So you've
Yeah.
got the premise, you've got the setup. They love the fact that there's true crime podcasts running through it, which I think I've really enjoyed writing as well, and I thought it added a different element to it. They love the fact that the setup, which is what I've just talked to you about, in terms of what the premise is. They loved all of that. It was just what happens, why she's disappeared. That's what they didn't like. And so yeah, it took a massive rethink, and but hopefully we've got there. I know that it's a better book than I wrote the
Mm,
first time round. I definitely know that it is, and I definitely could see that they were right. But it was interesting how I hadn't seen it until they'd pointed it out. That's what surprised me quite a lot, was that I think you can get so caught up in your writing and your story sometimes, can't you?
mm. Yeah, you can't see it because it's just you and that story for so long, and you battle for so many different
Yeah.
things whilst putting that story, coming up with the original premise for the story and then expanding that premise into this is how you work into an outline and then into your draft. And it's just you alone for so long. And it's like, writing that very first book, there's such relief in getting to the end and writing the end. You just want to get it out and you feel like, they're going to see what I see, but then they see something
Yeah.
completely different. And it takes a lot to step back and say, okay, let me take on board what's been said and now
Yeah.
change and move on.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was blindsided by it, really. I really didn't
yeah.
expect it, and I was quite blindsided by it. But then I also found it like scarily interesting, just how right they were. And like you say, you don't
Mm,
see it when you're in it at the time. And it is that old
no.
expression of you can't see the wood for the trees when you're writing at them at that point. And also I think you can go off down a little tunnel of going, well, that's the end point that I want to get to, and therefore you just keep writing and writing, and you don't often stop and go, is this the best solution? Is this the best way that I can be doing it? Um, so I guess I feel really lucky that they both were able
Yeah.
to say to me, this isn't working. We're not going to do anything with it. You need to change it.
Yeah. And I think it says something when you got two people who are both on the same page. One was saying yes and the other was saying no.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would have been worse,
Yeah.
but the fact that two individual people have read it and reached the same conclusion says something.
Yeah.
Right,
Very much
Heidi,
so. Yeah.
I'm very aware
Yeah.
of time, so I'm going to ask you your last final set of
Ah,
questions, and we can make them quick fire. So,
okie doke.
are you
Okay.
an introvert or extrovert or a hybrid of the two?
I think I'm definitely a hybrid of the two. I think, there's bits of me that go each way, for sure.
Mm, okay. So what challenge? And I
Is
need to
that
say,
enough? Do
good.
you want me?
That's enough. No, that's enough. And the next one, I always say I need to caveat it now with saying it can be a good or bad one. Just people automatically think, oh, it needs to be the worst experience. But no, what challenge or experience in your life, good or bad, shaped you the most?
I I think my childhood, actually, I had a lot of challenges in my childhood, and I
Mm,
think that they shaped me quite a lot. They've made me quite a strong, determined person. So that's probably what I would go to.
okay. If you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I'd give myself lots of pieces of advice at the age of 25. I think I'd say, make better decisions in your life. Think about the long term more than the short term. But they're all probably things that I would never have listened to. And I think one important thing that I would say to myself is, like, look after your health and
Yeah.
fitness, and start building that up from that age, because another 25 years on and you realise that I should have done a lot earlier.
It's just so much harder. Every time I walk up the stairs, Heidi, and I'm like, there was a time when I could just run upstairs and it didn't bother me. And now I'm thinking, did I take my glucosamine this morning? No, I did not, because my left knee hurts. So, it's my little moan.
Exactly that.
So,
Oops,
I've already asked you I always ask now, what is your non-writing tip for writers? So nothing to do with the writing process, your non-writing tip.
That's a really hard one. But still for writers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does reading count as
Yeah.
non-writing? My tip would be just read everything, and especially read in your genre. I think it is so important to know what every other author who sits in the same place as you, who will be sitting in the same place as you on the shelves, is writing, and what they're doing, and and just keeping an eye on where the market's going. I think that cannot be underestimated, actually.
Yeah, I think that is good advice. And finally, Heidi, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
Online, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, both under @Heidi Perks author. And I have, my website has just been refreshed as well, and that's heidiperksauthor.co.uk. So yeah, I've got a new sparkly website up and running now, which will hopefully give readers lots of information on my books and more.
It's a very nice website, and that just leaves me to say, Heidi Perks, not welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We've got another hour.
Yeah, we've got another hour to go. So, Heidi Perks, thank you very much for being part of the conversation.
Oh, thank you. It's been brilliant. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's conversation with Nadine Matheson. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a brand new episode featuring more amazing guests. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the podcast grow. And if you'd like to support the show, you can buy me a cup of coffee or sign up on Patreon. The links are in the show notes. And if you'd love to join the conversation as a guest, feel free to send an email to theconversation@nadinematheson.com. Thanks again for your support, and I'll catch you next time.